Hi, this is Bob Stammers, and welcome to another episode of the Financial Literacy Network podcast. I'm one of the founders of the FLN, which provides advice, resources, and support to CFA societies around the world interested in financial literacy and investor education, and in supporting like-minded organizations looking for additional resources to help manage their programs. So today's guest is Alice Avanian, CFA, a board member of the FLN. Alice, thank you for joining us. So to give you some background, Alice is vice president in the Goldman Sachs Global Investment Research Department. She was on the board of CFA Boston for 12 years. And in 2013, she founded the Financial Literacy Initiative there, a community outreach program that strikes alliances with nonprofit groups or employers to leverage their reach to access a wide variety of audiences and close the financial literacy gap. Alice also holds an MBA and a Bachelor's of Science from NYU's Stern School of Business. So thanks, Alice, for joining us. In addition to learning about the Financial Literacy Initiative at CFA Society Boston, I really wanted to discuss your success in motivating volunteers to work on the financial literacy program there and what that has meant for the society. So first off, can you give us a brief introduction on how volunteers fit within the structure of the Financial Literacy Initiative at the Society?
Thank you. First, let me elaborate upon our structure, which you mentioned briefly a few minutes ago. At CFA Boston, our financial literacy effort is driven by organizations throughout the local community. These organizations, whether nonprofits or employers, have a built-in audience, know their needs, select relevant topics, and arrange all the logistics for us in person or via Zoom, especially nowadays. Audience demographics can range from high school, for example, we work with junior achievement, to young adults transitioning out of homelessness, to employers like the South Shore YMCA, and also senior centers and libraries. At any time, we have up to 20 active alliances, many of which continue for years. I'll give you an example of one of our most fun presentations, which was to the Barbara Lynch Grupo Restaurants James Beard award-winning chef, where we presented to her restaurant workers while we were all seated at the bar. Our grassroots approach allows us to have a wide impact throughout the Boston area. But you asked me, how do the volunteers fit in? So at CFA Boston, volunteers are integral to our success. We couldn't have achieved the breadth and depth of our reach throughout the community without them. The volunteers create our content, regularly update it, deliver it to our varied audiences, as well as manage the relationships with each of these community organizations.
So there's a lot of societies that use volunteers, but CFA Society Boston has been really successful. How many volunteers do you have now in the Financial Literacy Initiative?
Every year we have over 100 volunteers filling in these various roles.
Wow, that's a lot to manage, but I know it works really well. So I know that other societies, like I said, use volunteers, but they use them in a little different ways than you do. So what do you think are the main benefits of CFA Boston's approach to its volunteers?
So CFA Boston offers volunteers the opportunity to be creative and to leverage their talents and strengths while honing their people, presentation, and managerial skills. So that's very attractive to volunteers. So let me give you an example of some of the roles that volunteers can play. So let's start first with our alliances. All of our presentations are by request. Some come from Google searches for Financial Literacy Boston and are organizations that we are not familiar with or are new to us. But most of our alliances are driven by our volunteers who have relationships with these organizations through their local high school or board seats or community organizations. So that gives the volunteers a lot of fulfillment to be working directly with organizations that they may already have relationships with. In any case, each alliance is assigned a leader who manages the relationship, the content, and the volunteers who will present. So this provides our volunteers with valuable leadership experience. Next, all of our content is created and updated by our volunteers. They will create new content upon request. For example, Intro to Home Ownership was a recent request we got. We also recently were asked to create how to use payday lenders, with the answer being don't use them. Younger demographics prefer experiential learning, so our volunteers create interactive activities, for example, budgeting. When I presented to high schoolers recently, I learned that their monthly budget essentials included things like sneakers, bicycle equipment, and nail appointments. I wouldn't have realized those were essential, but we learn from our audiences. Anyway, the next potential role for volunteers is to update the material as needed. In addition, our volunteers manage our content library because we have our content sorted or stored by alliance in case the same alliance asks for the same presentation next year or in a few months. And it's also sorted by topic. So we have volunteers who can manage the library aspect itself, including one of the volunteers who was a senior editor at a major investment bank. So perfectly fits her skill set. We also have volunteers who use other media. For example, last year's April Financial Literacy Month, we did a webinar on the stock market with one of our volunteers. And other volunteers came up with the idea and created a calendar with a daily financial tip or suggestion that we then sent to all of our active alliances, as well as posted on social media daily. So you can see, because of the structure of our financial literacy initiative, there are many, many roles that volunteers can fill. Some of them fill many roles, some of them fill just one role, but it provides a breadth of experience for them that appeals to them.
So you were saying that you work with lots of different partners. They provide an audience. So the audience might be really, really different depending on who one of the volunteers, the audience the volunteer is speaking to. Do you allow them to modify the content that they're presenting at all, or are you very structured in what they have to present?
It's a very good question. We absolutely want to be as flexible as possible to meet the needs of the organizations. So our library is set up with a core curriculum. We actually have a folder called Core, C-O-R-E. And then, as I said, we also store the curriculum or the presentations, the activities, the PowerPoints, any other media that we use. We also store by alliance. So if we are presenting to high schoolers, the core presentation can be adapted with extra activities or more definitions. If we are presenting to senior citizens regarding retirement or 401k or Social Security, obviously that's going to be modified for the demographic, the age, versus what we present for younger audiences, where we talk more about the power of compounding, etc. So again, we try to be as flexible as possible. And because we have many volunteers, we offer both the organizations and the volunteers maximum flexibility. And the volunteers like the creativity and the ability to have input into the curriculum that they're presenting.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So one of the things, Alice, you've told me in the past is that Boston has been very successful at using the initiative to attract a different kind of member to the society. And so I was wondering, what's the strategy for attracting and then motivating and ultimately retaining so many volunteers?
Thank you. Volunteer engagement has always been an important ancillary benefit of our financial literacy initiative. And we do have a staff member who works with us, and they have told us that we attract members as volunteers who actually have not volunteered elsewhere for the society. When we look at the demographic of our volunteers, we have a wide range from brand new charter holders, even including student members who are not yet charter holders, young professionals. We have a few university professors, as well as retired folks among our CFA members. And you might ask, what keeps them engaged? Some of the members have been with us, some of the volunteers have been with us since inception 8 years ago. And they tell us they are extremely passionate about providing financial literacy. So they are volunteering because of the following things where they feel very strongly. First of all, we are all driven by a desire to give back to the society. We know our financial literacy is sorely needed throughout society, all ages and income groups. Moreover, providing financial literacy education can help close the opportunity gap. Many of our audiences are underprivileged, underbanked, susceptible to high fees or interest payments, need to know more about the benefits of compound returns from investments versus compound interest working against you in a credit card. Also, we can improve the perception of the financial industry by sharing our knowledge. And lastly, we represent the CFA charter because we educate students about this career path. And in fact, we have a presentation describing career paths in the financial industry and how a CFA can be beneficial, both as a user or an investor, as well as a potential career path. So all of these reasons make our volunteers really passionate and want to participate year after year.
It's interesting. Young people don't get the opportunities to talk to a CFA charter holder very much. And I'm wondering if CFA charter holders providing financial literacy to these younger people, once they become adults, start making more money, if they will seek out charter holders because they know who they are, what they do, and those kind of things. So seems
We
very
hope
positive.
so.
Yeah.
We hope so.
So what are your most significant challenges in managing such a large group of volunteers? What do you think that if other societies are thinking of using large numbers of volunteers, what should they be considering before doing it?
Let me refer back again to our structure, which helps to streamline this management question. So we have a hub and spokes model. The 3 co-chairs and our staff liaison are at the hub. Each alliance is a spoke with an alliance leader who manages their volunteers. So this decentralized approach is scalable and makes handling so many volunteers manageable. We also use technology to streamline our operations. Our library is online and accessible by the volunteers. And as I said, it's sorted in a couple different ways, so it's easy for them to find what they're looking for. In addition, we use Connect, which is like a chat, a platform for posting information, like if we need volunteers. Just today, we looked for volunteers for junior achievement in November. We can also post articles of interest, other updates. So the technology helps reduce manual labor, so to speak. But to increase volunteer engagement and cross-fertilization of ideas, in addition, we have monthly FinLit Fridays via Zoom, where we have guest speakers and we ask for updates from the volunteers who attend, and we ask them to speak to each other and just share information. And we usually get up to 20 volunteers each monthly Friday at noon. But again, none of this would be possible without some staff support from the CFA Boston office. But thinking about other societies who may be smaller and may not have staff support, really any society can operate at the grassroots level like we do. Smaller societies may choose to limit the number of alliances, thereby limiting the number of spokes on the hub. Smaller societies could be more selective, and they could also choose to only work with longstanding partners in a series for maximum impact. We prefer such relationships. We have some alliances that have been with us for 8 years. For example, Year Up, which is a national organization. We have some other national organizations which we hope to continue to leverage for maximum impact. For example, we work with Habitat for Humanity. We work for YMCA in the South Shore area of Boston. But we also have the resources to do one-off presentations on request. But a smaller society could, again, limit the number of alliances, limit the number of spokes to fit the number of volunteers that they have.
That makes a lot of sense. So I know that you started this initiative back in 2013 when you were on the board of CFA Boston. How important do you think it is that societies have board support for their financial literacy initiatives to be successful?
Board support is really critical because in most societies, the president or chair rotates every 1 or 2 years, and every new president or chair may have different goals, and depending on how much staff support is available, there may not be the help that a financial literacy initiative needs. So it's important to have buy-in from the broader board, not just from any one particular chair, as was the case when I started it back in 2013. We do present regularly to the board in terms of the number of volunteers, the number of alliances, and in fact, CFA Boston has made financial literacy part of its 5-year strategic plan. And that also reflects an increasing focus on diversity and inclusion, D&I, because as I mentioned, a lot of our organizations serve underprivileged, underbanked, and lower income communities. And these are the people who need really a lot more financial literacy or financial knowledge, so they don't have problems with, as I mentioned, payday lenders or credit card interest and fees. But we also have presented to more wealthy middle class school neighborhoods, and they surprisingly need the knowledge as well. But overall, the board support, to get back to your question, is really critical due to the transition in board members and board officers. And because of the importance of financial literacy, you want to start an effort that continues. It has, if you can have momentum, you can work with organizations who come back to you year after year, and you build up a reputation in the community, actually, for making good presentations, being credible, having good content, being reliable. And I should mention as an aside, we do not co-present with for-profit banks. So all of our alliances appreciate that we are nonpartisan, so to speak, and not trying to just sell some other products or services.
Yeah, that's really important to build trust with the audience. So, CFA Boston has been really, has gotten a lot of benefit about, with you having been there for so long and provided the continuation necessary to kind of build a really comprehensive program. So I'm wondering, what do you think from your experience are the most important things that you've learned about creating and managing a financial literacy program that you would like to share with other societies and other organizations that are thinking of doing something similar?
Thank you. I wanted to just pick up on a small point in what you mentioned regarding continuity. That's why we have 3 co-chairs. We always wanted to make sure we had a succession plan in place if one of us couldn't continue. So we have backup, which helps with the scale of what we do, as well as potentially continuity plans in the future. And of course, as I said, we do have staff help. So going more specifically to your question about what is the most important thing I've learned, I would say that this goes for all of our volunteers, we've learned that there are tremendous rewards for giving back to the community in this way, imparting our knowledge to help others. It's strategically important for the board, but it's also on a personal level, very, very satisfying. And the volunteers, as I mentioned, are really passionate and come back year after year. So I encourage all societies to look for opportunities to create a financial literacy program, no matter how big or small, because it will benefit your volunteers, your society, your CFA society, your audiences, and actually society as a whole.
Great. So unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this episode. Alice, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. You've really given us some insights into your volunteer strategy and your program at CFA Boston. For you that are listening, there are several ways to get involved with the Financial Literacy Network and get information about other programs and best practices in creating and managing financial literacy or investor education programs. We have a LinkedIn group and a website, which can be found at financialliteracynetwork.org. And of course, there's the YouTube channel where these podcasts that you have already found are located. So, and then also any questions you might have can be sent to info@financialliteracynetwork.org. Thank you so much for joining us today.